Feminism is still alive, the third wave feminism movement. This is my daughter. Her name is Ariana. She was born 3 years ago. And it was not until I did the research for this paper that I realized how privileged I am as a woman. And because of the pioneers that I'm about to talk about, that not just myself but my daughter also have the future, the rights that we have today, and the future that is so open for us. The first wave began and lasted for almost 72 years, beginning in 1848 and lasting through the 1920s. In Seneca Falls, New York, that was the first meeting place, headed by Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott. There was about 100 people in attendance. It was here that the Declaration of Sentiments, Grievances, and Resolutions was designed. The statements that were put into this were echoed the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal. Initially, these women were addressing the barriers that were putting limitations on their rights. That included family duties, a lack of education, few economic opportunities, an absence of voice in political debates. It wasn't until 1850 when Stanton merged with Susan B. Anthony. They formed a lifelong bond and fought for women to obtain these basic rights. It did not come with a great victory. While lobbying for Congress to include women in the 14th and 15th Amendments, they were denied. They soon began focusing their efforts more targeted on the right for women to vote and developing the National Women's Suffrage Association, wanting to completely abolish the 15th Amendment. In 1890, they combined their forces with the American Women's Suffrage Association combined and united with the National American Women's Suffrage Association. And with this momentum, they gathered support from other women's groups, including the Women's Trade Union League, the Women's Christian Temperance Union, and the National Consumers League. For 20 years, they worked together to get the right to vote. The first state that granted women the rights was Wyoming in 1869, followed by Colorado in 1893, Utah and Idaho in 1896. It continued through the turn of the century. In 1913, Illinois was the first state east of the Mississippi to allow a woman to vote. In 1970, President Wilson urged Congress to pass a voting rights amendment. And at that time, Jeanette Rankin from Montana was sworn into the 65th Congress on April 2nd. She was the first woman to serve in the national legislature. And the battle over the women's rights continued until August 26 of 1920, when the creation of the 19th Amendment granted women full voting rights across the nation. The second wave began in the late 1960s through the 1980s. Mainly with the issue of the Miss American pageants in 1968. More radical women used this performance, describing it as a way as women are being put up as cattle, that their appearance was more important than who they were on the inside. And it was said that the second wave grew so much because of the development of other groups, such as the Black Panthers, and the civil rights movement were going on during this time as well. Most radical women concluded that the emancipation of women would occur only with the destruction of capitalism and the rise of socialism. It would make them freed from men and their families to be involved in a productive career. The liberal feminists were mostly inspired by Betty Friedan's book, the bestseller, The Feminine Mystique. They were more concerned with their lack of social and political powers, as well as pushing boundaries for reproductive rights, including abortion, recognizing that it's not about the woman in the kitchen, but it is also about the Black women raising their children. It is during this time that women recognized there are all types of feminists in the country, and it was carried through to the third wave. What is unique about the third wave movement is that all young girls are born into this privilege. It was granted to us by the pioneers of the feminist movement and the work that they endured to give us the rights we have today. It is tied up with the effects of globalization and the restructuring of power, reflecting the diversity of women's interests and perspectives. They are developing a new worldwide perspective as well as creating alliances with various demographics, including blacks, lesbians, gay, bisexual, transsexual, transgendered movements. Today's feminist is taking the rights that we fought for 200 years ago and allying ourselves with groups that have just begun with their own privileges and rights. Rebecca Walker wrote an article for Miss Magazine in 1992, Becoming the Third Wave. Rebecca is the daughter of Alice Walker, who wrote The Color Purple. And in this article, she articulated a rage and anger and hunger for action that resonated with the young women and men across the United States. Miss Magazine themselves declared themselves a part of the Third Wave movement. Walker joined with Shannon Liss and developed the Third Wave Direct Action Corporation, and its intent was to fill a void in young women's leadership and to mobilize young people to become more involved socially and politically in their communities. It took strong roots in developing a sense of community, empowerment, and leadership among many Freedom Summer writers that they had in workshops. Even in the infancy of this movement, it was clear that the women's rights movement would be related to a multitude of issues for women, especially as they worked on a world filled with opportunities because of the work of the pioneer feminists before them. The third wave's definition of feminism would connect women's issues to issues of race, sexuality, class, and ability. It was Rebecca herself even believed that the second wave feminists failed to incorporate the women of color, lesbians as they were blacks, bisexual women, transgendered women, because they were embarrassed to those women in the movement. Low income women were also looked down upon, especially in relation to their reproductive rights because of their lack of income, as well as the women in developing countries. They were empowered by the women to suggest change, increase their power, and equal rights within their own cultures by using their own voices. Many of the issues that women today face is still domestic labor. 8 out of 10 women still say they do more housework than their male counterparts. Women are also still paid less than men and are more likely to give up their jobs with the birth of a child. The media today still tears apart at young girls. 70% of girls under the age of 7 say they want to be thinner. There is still a glass ceiling. It looks as if a woman can accomplish the world and reach the top of their career ladder, but they will always be underpaid than their male co-employees. Social inequality, whether they're women or lesbian or transgendered, are prejudiced to experience higher levels, and women in other countries are starting to seek asylum in the United Kingdom because of the mortality rates and health disparities. Violence against women is still a huge issue. However, I do think that women committing violence against men is still not addressed as much as the violence against women. Domestic violence isn't cool whether you're a girl or a boy. A large part of the world still refuses to recognize rape within a marriage as a criminal offense, and 89% of women in the UK face domestic violence, and on average, 2 women a week are killed. Women still continue to fight for all these injustices, not just in the United States, but across the world. It is a collaborative effort of today's women because of the work of the pioneers in the 1800s that they began. And we can keep working for a new world for equal opportunity and justice, as well as bringing empowerment to women who are still unable to speak for themselves. And it is just not women, but other social groups, such as the lesbians, the gays, the transgendered, the non-gender conforming. The Third Wave Foundation works nationwide and helps support the vision and voices of young women, transgendered, and gender nonconforming youths, usually between the ages of 15 and 30. It is supported through grants and leadership development. It raises awareness about issues and models that are often overlooked in social justice movements. The missions and long-term goal of this foundation is to create change in a community, empower groups with the skills, power, and opportunity to lead, offering support with progressive movements, and supporting new and innovative approaches to social justice. Its name was changed to the Third Wave Fund in 2014. It offers these grants to a multitude of communities throughout the United States. Each group ranges in race, gender, sexuality, and age, from Washington, D.C. to California. They're made up with women and youth from all backgrounds with developing equal social justices, from reproductive rights and violence against women to educating communities about HIV and AIDS, as well as the sexual education, and to make uh, individuals gain access to the types of services as well. Third wave feminists not only carry the legacy of equal rights, but we are also developing the equality of life for others within our country and around the world. And without the work of all these groups, the life of a woman of today could be much different. It could be like you see in this image right here. So the harder a wife works, the cuter she looks. Iconically holding a feather duster, her high heels, and an apron on. Support housework. As written by Jennifer Baumgardner and Amy Richards, they described it as a day in 1970. And in that time, if a child was born, they would automatically take the father's name. But if there was not a father present, they would then be considered illegitimate, and it was most likely written on their birth certificate. Child care in preschools were non-existent. All care came mostly from the mothers. Sitters or nursery schools were very expensive. Young girls were unable to play in Little League, and in junior high were required to take home ec, while their boys could take shop or small engine repair. And if your boss demanded sex, you did it. And if we didn't, you would be fired. Or if you did not feel like that was worth keeping your job, you would quit it entirely. The most appealing job during this era was being a flight attendant or stewardess. It was required to be sexy, and if you did not wear makeup or exceeded a certain age or weight, you would be fired. Even if you were married, you could not be a flight attendant. Until 1968, when the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission made it illegal to fire a stewardess for getting married. These are just a few brief examples of how feminism has changed the modern woman's world. With 200 years of women's movement nearing, society has also appeared to be at a standstill. Coming from a modern woman's experience, the progression has slowed down. Even with women aligning themselves with other groups of people, some of these groups have developed on their own and have developed their own voice and are fighting for themselves without a feminist in the front. It is as if women are once stuck again. Is it the fact that we have fought so valiantly for all these years that a modern woman is overworked? Is the movement of this wave has been slow? While there are people participating, it has not been an overwhelming movement amongst women. There has not been much interest for what the feminist is about, and that is why it is believed to still be dead. However, with the current work and aligning ourselves with various groups of people and helping them gain access, our work is still at it. We just aren't doing it for ourselves anymore. Thank you.